Hello, everybody. Welcome to the IFL 2, Formula 2 Season 2, race number 9. We're on round 9 at Watkins Glen. And we are just starting qualifying here with our drivers. So, practice session was about an hour. Qualifying, we will have 25 minutes to set down a scorcher of a lap and see what these drivers can do. Drivers will be doing 37 laps in this race. And yeah, the F2 competition is heating up a bit. What do you think, Rob? How are things going so far in the F2 championship?
Well, the F2 championship is going absolutely crazy right now. Lewis Archer has got a massive gap on the rest of the field in the point standings, but in that next battle for the top like 4 to 5 spots, like sixth, fifth in the standings, it's all actually really close right now. And with us, having a lower car count, um, there's a couple races where only one or two drivers will not get points, or there's a whole race where everybody's getting points. So, as a driver, tend to have a little bit more sense of being okay going in there. That even if you wreck out, you still got some points at the end of the day. Whereas like our F3 counterpart, we've got 20 plus drivers, so there's a 50-50 chance that you are getting points. So it's very, very close. Really, anything can happen, and we still got 7 or 8 races, I believe, left to go. So, I mean, there's a lot up for grabs. Lewis Archer is really going to have to make some mistakes in order for someone else to take that top spot, but I think it's still possible.
Yep, Lewis has been atop our leaderboards. Right now we have Chris Byram, his teammate, putting down his first hot lap, and that will be our first lap that should count as soon as he's done with this. But yeah, a lot of team dynamics, team racing here in the F2. This is the step up from our F3 series, so these guys are really going to be pushing each other, A, to get better, and then B, to be the elite drivers of the league. Because not only are they the top drivers of F2, but they're top drivers of the entire league. So these guys are every week in, week out, putting in time, putting in the effort, pushing each other. As we see Chris just grabbing a little bit of dirt there. But yeah, it's a growing league and a growing division here in the league, and we are happy to see all these drivers out here today. Chris Byram setting the first lap, like I said, coming around the corner here. He gets out safe. Let's see if he didn't have any off tracks. And Chris does take the first time, setting those purple sectors, a 130.578. We have Steve Bunting behind him. Lewis Cologne setting his lap, his first hot lap at 131.4. Coming up behind him here. Looks like that is Steve Bunting in one of the BE Racing cars. Lewis Archer coming across for his first lap, a 131.4, not nearly close enough to his teammate Chris, almost a full second off that pace. Eli Cannon coming down the straight has his first lap at a 132. A lot of cars in the pits. Cristiano Schegetman still on his first out lap, so he should be putting down a hot lap soon. Nick Marshall comes across the line, finishing his out lap, and he will start his hot lap. And we have Chris Byram coming back around, who's going to be our next across the line. Let's see if he can improve on his time of a 130.5, which is so far a second to the next guy behind him and his teammate Lewis Archer. So Rob, let us in. What are we looking for at Watkins Glen today? What kind of track can we see?
Watkins Glen is very much a flowing racetrack. You really want to get in the groove. Um, Yeah, there is grass on either side of your different corners, but there is still walls there, and then walls come up very quick. So you got to be very, very flowy. There's not real hard braking corners in here. I believe there's two corners where you're actually depending on a little bit of straight line braking, but most of it is just trail braking through the corner. So we're going to see some very, very high speeds here. Lots of drafting if these guys stay close to each other, and that might mean that it's hard for these guys to break away because the draft is going to be so prevalent down the long straightaways here.
Yep, yeah, we see it in these Formula cars, the slipstream you get in behind them, and these cars just gain an extra 15 miles an hour almost in some instances. Especially, we have the very, very long front stretch, as we're going to follow Nicholas Marshall here just to see how long this front stretch is. You get this big exit from the front stretch, you go up the hill to the right, continue off to the left. It's kind of like a tame Eau Rouge from Spa. And then you have the long straight after the slight right, and people are going to be just in the slipstream. You can see who is that? Louis Cologne behind Nick Marshall. And then you have a really high speed fast corner here. And you just keep that speed up the whole time. Got a looping left as well, high speed left. That will bring you down to the straight right before as much of a hairpin as I guess you could call it. Brings you back around. Then you have another slight straight. You can see just how fast Louis Cologne has caught up to Nick Marshall just because of that slipstream. He's closed the gap, and it's not a purposeful, like, I need to catch you. It's just that slipstream is there. And we have our other hairpin, I guess you could call it. Spins you around. And Cologne's going to try and gather some speed, get some warmth in those tires, and hit a hot, fast lap here. With Nicholas Marshall's going to give him an accidental slipstream. And that might help Louis Cologne out, but as we've seen in previous races, if you're racing somebody else, you're losing time. So Cologne and Marshall racing each other right now, that's actually losing time for both these guys on their qualifying lap. But we see Ivan Balkamp has put down a 130.7. Louis Archer is also 130.7. Slightly slower. And then closest to them is Eli Cannon with a 131.3. Louis Cologne at a 131.4. So you can see these guys spread out a little bit throughout the track. A little more than the second separating some of them. But like you said, that slipstream is going to play a big part in how these guys, keep together and stay in a pack. So let's take a quick look at our weather here. Pop up our race info. We have Watkins Glen, and we are sitting at a brisk 78 degrees. It's not too hot there, but track temp is still at 98 degrees Fahrenheit. We're only partly cloudy, 55% humidity, and 4-mile-an-hour winds. So that track is going to be hot, and it should cool off as the sun starts to go down. But Rob, what does that do to the track for us when we have that much heat in the track?
It just makes it a little bit slippery. You get that heat to start rising, and you're really trying to push these cars to the edge. And these are really some point and shoot cars. So you brake straight and you make your turn kind of suddenly. It's not kind of other cars where you kind of gently turn on into the corner. These cars can really handle kind of a little bit of throwing around. So they're kind of point and shoot. Once you get that heat in it, sometimes you can turn the car and it just kind of slides across the top of the racetrack. It rubber kind of melts across the surface and doesn't really grit to it as much as it does when it's a lot cooler. So we can see a lot of drivers possibly sliding off a little bit, going a little bit wide, and maybe even catching the grass going wide on a corner because, they went in so hot and just kind of didn't want to turn, didn't want to slide, or even the rear end wanted to come around and they had to try to save it. So it's really going to make these guys drive a little harder with these F2 cars. They have a lot of horsepower to the rear wheels. And with this being such a windy racetrack, they're going to be in the corner a lot at a high speed. So it can really play a big toll on those tires, and that could lead us to another factor is tire wear and pit stops.
Yep, yeah, these tires will wear a lot faster in the heat when you're slipping and sliding around left and right, and like you said, you're essentially melting your tires off across the track as you're sliding back and forth in these hot conditions. So a big factor will probably be tire wear, tire degradation, just to see how fast that those tires wear off and scrub away a bunch of time and then a bunch of rubber on the track. So the track might get a little grippier. As the sun goes down, we'll get a little bit more grip, but Jason Simons does a good exit there. We've seen a handful of guys already kissing that wall, exiting the last turn, and getting a lot of that curb. So you see a lot of our drivers getting really close to that. But that's what you got to do in these cars. You have to push the boundaries and push the edges of the track as much as you can.
And that turn is kind of crazy on this racetrack. I found practicing here over the week before this race. It's right almost in the middle of your gearbox, between your gears. So really you could slow down a little bit, take a shorter gear, and get on the throttle, or you can keep your gear and really just try to trail brake and keep your speed through the corner. And I think that's why we've seen a few drivers kind of getting in the wall. They're trying to get everything they can. They're trying not to slow down as much as they can in the corner, and it's just really biting them with how the track is right now.
Yep, and you have some of these drivers are going to play it a little safer, make sure they get their laps in, try and keep it on the track just to get some consistent laps, which is the name of the game in these cars. It's just consistency. But like I said, you have like we just saw there, Stuart Gibbons coming really wide on his exit. He's trying to get as much speed as he can. Jason Simons, like I said, he is putting down a fairly good time. That was a 3-minute lap, so he was taking his time getting around, getting those tires warm. Steven Grabowski looks like he came across, but he didn't get a lap set. So he must have gone off track slightly. And that's the other thing that you want to really watch out for is sliding off track, and that loses you time. On top of everything, you have that little bit of a slide off track. You get your 1X for qualifying. It's crucial that you stay on track because your lap time doesn't count if you slide an inch off the track and you have that off track, because that whole lap was for nothing. If you have to go and refuel now, you just wasted your best lap. It's a lot that goes into it, more than just, yep, my tires are good, my tires are bad, and I got fuel or I don't. There's everything in between. Let's see, Rob Slater coming across, improving his time up to 6th. A lot of guys still in the pits. They might be waiting just for the opportune time to set out, to where they're running out of fuel for their qualifying and getting that really low fuel hot lap. And Steven Grabowski is the only one yet to set a time, but we will see if he can get one down here. Like he will. 131.7 pushes him up to 8th place, which is kind of a surprise. We've been seeing Steven Grabowski up in the top 5 fairly consistently, so we'll see if he can't change things and move it around. Cristiano Schegetman going up to the 6th place spot. He is our current leader for the F3 championship, and he is trying his hand filling in for an absent driver in the turning point car.
And one thing you can see right there as we see Chris Byram come out of the last corner and complete another lap. As you can see how dark the track is there as he enters turn 1. See all that dark rubber laid down? That's all been laid down just from practice in this 10 minutes of qualifying. So these guys laying a lot of rubber down on this racetrack in a short amount of time, which tells me that this heat might actually be heating their tires up a little bit. So it could make it really interesting midway through this race to see what strategy calls are going.
Yep, yeah, with tire degradation being a key factor, do you try and split it right down the middle and really, just get the same life out of each stint? Do you try and, go short then long then short on your tires, try and conserve your tires? How do you play this in a way to where you're going to come out on top and have an advantage over the other drivers? I mean, there's so many different ways that you can try and make this work. But with this heat, it makes things a little unpredictable. If it was cool, you can conserve your tires for, 3/4 of the race almost and get away with it. With this heat, you might even have to do a 2-stop to keep your speed up to where you need it to be. Well, I don't think we've seen a 2-stop yet, but on these hot races, we might see them. As Chris comes across the line, he doesn't improve his time, but his time up on board right now, that 1:30.047, is going to be really tough to beat. Chris slides off. Looks like he's out of gas. You have Ivan come across the line. He does not improve on his time at all. 1:30.566. Jason Simons comes up to 4th, and Eli Cannon right behind him up in 5th. Stuart Gibbons coming across the finish line here. Down the straight. And such a long front straight as well. Gibbons does not. He improves his time but doesn't improve his position. You have his teammate Nicholas Marshall. Ooh, just getting a little bit too much of that curb, sliding off the track, getting out of the way for the other drivers going by. And that's Rob Slater going up the hill. We have Steven Grabowski. We'll jump back to coming across the finish line now. He has a purple sector in there. Let's see if he can improve, and he does. He improves up to 3rd place right now. Like I said, he is normally in the top 5, so I was surprised it was taking him this long to get up there, but he's made his way up. But can he put down a faster time and nudge our pole sitter, currently Chris Byram, out of the running? It'll be interesting.
We haven't seen Chris Byram on the pole in a really long time.
Yep, he's normally...
he's got to be really happy with his time right now.
Yep, he's normally in those top few drivers, but pole position has evaded him just ever so slightly. He's normally, a couple tenths off from it, and, right now he's sitting on pole, provision to pole. He's got 7 minutes to try and improve and fend off some of these guys, as we see Grabowski again, a purple first sector, a couple really good sectors here. Ooh, goes off just the tiniest bit. Let's hope he didn't have an off track there. You can see he's taking those wide lines, trying to keep that speed up. It's such a fast track, Watkins Glen. It keeps you going really, really quick. And you see him on the exit, getting a lot of exit curb there, coming down, crossing the line, and he improves to 2nd. Still can't beat out Chris Byram though. As we have Eli Cannon coming across the finish line here in just a moment. He's sitting in a respectable 6th position. Finishing up his out lap right now, and he will be starting his hot lap. Let's hop on board. And if you could, Rob, take us through this lap.
Yeah, so you're going to be going full throttle. You're going to come up this S section. You want to run the curve all the way to outside. These cars, you don't want to touch that curve, otherwise you can get it. Now coming out, this is a perfect DRS zone. They have 8 pushes of DRS throughout the race, and you'll get a really good toe coming down this straightaway. And with DRS, you can really get going. You got to watch out for other cars though, because other cars are going to get in the draft too, and you might see some free wide situation coming down into this long corner. Some crazy braking that goes in, and once you get through this next corner, it's a dive into the hairpin. It's a little bit of a hard braking zone, but at the same time, it's trail. You'll see a couple different lines, the inside or the outside through this corner. It'll really depend on how the guys are feeling with their tires. Now, this next corner is probably the hardest braking zone we have, and it really sets you up for the uphill double left. Eli Cannon going off the curb just a little bit, pushing the car to the limits. Very, very hard left-hand curve, flat and uphill, so you really got to watch your throttle. And these last 2 turns are really almost just wide open. This last turn you kind of let off a little bit, possibly downshift, and just hammer back on the throttle for the really long front straight into the sweeping turn 1.
Yep, that's a good analysis of the track there. The sweeping turn 1, you can run wide on that to the left and still count your lap. It's just you have a little bit of a bump to go over, and once again, these S's are just so high speed. You're just
really
flat
hard
out.
To pass through the S's, but you can set yourself up for a pass coming out. So it can go too wide through the S's there, but it does get a little hairy and it will be a little close.
Yep, we have Eli still putting down a good time. And we know Eli, you know, he's constantly competing for the top 5s. You know, he's had a couple podiums. You know, he's just a consistent driver. Not always the fastest driver on the track, but one of the most consistent on the track at any given time. And Eli will be looking to get some good points for Orion. They're sitting pretty good in the standings. Like you said, the standings for the drivers is fairly tight after first and second and third. But after the first and second Constructors Championship points, the points are real tight in the Constructors as well. And Eli and Orion, Eli taking over ownership of the team after a couple races this season. They've been doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, and that's really where Eli will get you on track. As we've seen, he's a fairly clean driver. We see him not have too many incidents. If it is an incident, it's something that probably happened on track. It was almost impossible to avoid. We don't really see him making mistakes on his own. So he's that, like you said, he's that consistent driver. He's not always the fastest, but he's got enough pace to where if you make a mistake, he's all over it. And that's where he's getting his spots. Is he'll run 5th, 6th. You see him 5th on the board as he just picked up his time a moment ago. Yep. He'll run 5th or 6th and just wait for somebody to make a mistake, and all of a sudden he's, you know, close to podium range. And he's actually done a very, very good job this year.
Yep. Which would you say is more important, Rob? Obviously, there's the slow and steady wins the race mentality, and then there's the, quick like bunny, gonna set down, the fastest lap times by 2 seconds faster than everybody else and just blow the competition away. But you're pushing your car to the limit, just like Chris Byram just did with his 129.9 lap time. He's improving definitely with the temperature going down and that grip level improving, and also because there's so much tire that is just ground into the track now. He's got a lot more rubber to grab with his tires.
Yeah, and when it comes down to that, really it's both. You really want to have that raw pace, because when you've got that raw pace, you can make a mistake and rebound from it. You can make a mistake and know, okay, I could drive through this field, it's no problem, I've got the pace to do it. Mm-hmm. When you don't have that pace, you have to rely on your consistency. You can't just spin out and then drive past 12 cars like we've seen Lewis Archer do, or Cristiano Shagetman, or even Chris Byram. So, like, you really have to rely on that consistency if you don't have that raw pace. If you are lucky enough to have that raw pace and have that talent, you still want to be consistent, but it's not as important to be consistent because you have pace.
Yep. So it kind of, you can dive into one or the other, or balance between the both. Whatever you're trying to do will pay off in the end, is what you're saying. But pace is definitely important for the races. Then you don't have to rely so heavily
that's the
on
end of
consistency.
qualifying, isn't it? Chris Byram, actually, he's got the pole.
We'll see. We have a couple drivers finishing up their times. We have Nicholas Marshall, who just passed the line. Eli Cannon's coming into the pits. Jason Simons is finishing up. We have Cristiano Shagetman on his final lap. And this will be the final spot for Cristiano Shagetman. Does he improve? No, he does not. Sits right back where he was in 9th place and right into the wall. But we have a grid now. We have a grid. We have warm-up coming up here. So let's take a look at our standings right now for our qualifying session. So we have Chris Byram sitting on pole. His first pole of this season, I believe. I could be mistaken, but Chris hasn't had a pole in just a little bit. He's normally competing with his teammate Lewis Archer for that pole position, but closest behind him by 1/100th of a second is Steven Grabowski, their affiliated team. Ivan Baukamp with 3/10 behind, and Lewis Archer was 6/10 behind. So normally, the story of the season has been Lewis Archer. It's been Lewis, but today Chris stepped it up and said, you know what, I'm gonna combat my teammate. I'm gonna combat the other guys. Chris, this is his race to win. Obviously the fastest one out there, but you never know what's going to happen. That consistency we were saying is going to play a key factor, especially with this heat. So Lewis Archer sitting in 4th, Eli Cannon in 5th, Jason Simons in 6th. Oh, and we're transitioning a bit. Jason Simons in 6th, Rob Slater in 7th, Louis Colon in 8th, Cristiano Shagetman sitting in 9th, Stuart Gibbons in 10th, Nicholas Marshall in 11th, and Steve Bunting rounding off the field in 12th. For BE Racing. So warm-up, what are these guys doing in warm-up right now, Rob? They're, are they trying to perfect their lines? Are they trying to see what fuel feels like in the car, since they've been running for 25 minutes on no fuel? What do we normally see out of our warm-up session?
Well, I mean, it really depends. If you get guys getting on track, usually it's for them to not cool down. You've been in the car for over an hour and a half straight, practice qualifying, getting ready to go racing. You're on your line, you know your marks, you know everywhere you're supposed to be, and when it comes down to getting on track, you don't want to sit and wait for that 5 minutes. Now, it's there for you to, if you need to go to the bathroom, or you need to get ready, or you need to fix your setup, or you got to get this and that ready. So it's a time to allow the drivers to get ready. And if you're getting on track, it's more than likely either A, you didn't get enough practice and you need all the seat time you can get, or B, you're trying not to cool down and miss your marks at the beginning of the race, because turn 1 is a very, very crucial spot in the race.
Yep. Yeah, and then it's another good thing is to get your pit entry. Obviously, your pit entry is going to be huge if you take tires, off of a caution lap. If you take tires during the racing time, it's not going to be a nice easy entry. You're going to try and optimize that entry with fuel, with tires worn. You're going to want to get your braking points down. So a lot of guys will practice their pit entries as well, just to get that down. As we see, Rob does that right now. Gets his braking point. If you get a penalty in warm-up, whatever. Get reset, go out. Penalty's not going to apply to anything. You get a penalty in the race, that's 40 seconds that you have to sit and wait if you come into the pit speeding. So that could be detrimental to a race where, seconds can win or lose you a race. And then that as well, what we just saw with Rob. Rob overdrives a tiny bit there, practicing his pit stop, practicing his tires, practicing getting out of the pits. And we'll see Lewis Archer coming out, followed by Jason Simons.
Lewis Archer, no doubt frustrated. Fourth place is a pretty respectable position in this grid, but definitely not what we usually see out of Lewis, which is usually on the front row. So he's got to be a little bit frustrated, but at the same time, we've seen what Lewis can do in these cars. So fourth place isn't always the worst. We've seen him go back to fourth on his start, starting from the pole. So I don't think it's really going to phase Lewis too much where exactly he's starting on the grid, but I'm sure he's a little upset that he didn't actually get that pole again.
Yep, and you can see Lewis right now. We'll actually get a closer look at this, what he's doing. He is parked on the track, and he's just getting his starts and stops going. He's testing out the track, seeing how slick it's going to be on that start. Right now, we have a couple cars passing him, but this is another thing drivers will do is get that start and stop going with their launch control, see how it is down the back straight, see, a slow turn around the track, just getting used to all of the bumps, all of the conditions, checking out how dark the rubber is on the track. Lewis is checking out the bumps right here. Just, it's almost like doing a track walk. He's doing a slow track walk inside of his car.
Yeah, we can't really actually get out and walk these tracks, being that we're on virtual tracks, but you'd be surprised at how much you can actually see and feel just by going around the racetrack really slow.
Yep, you'll see bumps that you don't normally see. You'll feel grooves in the track. You'll hit some grass and slide off and see the beautiful trees like Chris has just done. But it's super important, super crucial to get a feel for this track. That's why drivers in real life do a track walk. But we are done with warm-up. We should be gridding up in just a moment. Cars are being reset.
How many laps are we doing today? Was it?
I believe it is 37 laps
37
today.
laps. Oh man, everybody's getting on the start. A couple more to go.
We're waiting on one car right now. One car will be Cristiano Schegetman. Hopefully he does not miss the race start. This is the most intense moment right here. We have Cristiano, so we will be going any second now. We'll see our lights pop up. You see wheels spinning from a lot of these drivers with their launch control. And we have lights out and we are off. Chris Byron with a fantastic start. We have Ivan Baukamp right behind him, followed by Lewis Archer. And Rob Slider jumping up to fourth. We already have fighting going up the straight, up the S's here. And that slipstream is already proving to be a factor. And Steven Grabowski is down in 12th position right now, which is kind of unheard of.
Ivan Baukamp's making a shot at the lead under Chris Byram.
Ooh, yes, he is jumping ahead there. Jumps in front of Chris. We have Ivan Baukamp, Chris Byram, and Lewis Archer, followed by Rob Slider and Jason Simons. And these cars are real close to each other here. the slipstream will play a huge factor in these drivers today if they can keep this close to each other. We have side-by-side action going on between Simons and Slider. It looks like Slider gets out in front. And these guys are followed by Eli Cannon, Stuart Gibbons, Cristiano Schegetman, Steve Bunting, Nick Marshall, and then Grabowski. Something happened with Grabowski at the beginning. Not quite sure, but him and Louis Cologne are really far behind the pack, and Grabowski had qualified second.
Yeah, tough break for Steve Grabowski. Didn't see what happened. We definitely have a battle heating up for Steve. Chris Byram's not going to let Ivan Baukamp get away.
And Byram is pushing right behind Baukamp, and like we said, the slipstream down the straight. We have Byram going on the inside. Let's see if he can make it stick. Ooh, these guys are side by side. Beautiful racecraft here. And they are side by side still. Chris getting the more speed out of the corner. Ivan closes him off. Chris taking that wider line, probably trying to conserve his tires a little bit. And trying to stay right behind Ivan in that slipstream, trying to just keep him within sight, keep him within arm's reach, and he's definitely doing that right now. He is right behind him. As we see Ivan coming across for the beginning of lap number 3. Technically leading both laps, other than Chris starting off in pole. Ivan making a big jump up. As we can see our gains and losses for the race. Ivan jumping up 2 positions from the start. Chris dropping down his 1 position, and Chris is right behind him again. Let's see if he can make this one stick. His teammate Lewis Archer also within a half second. Lewis is staying out of the slipstream, trying to catch that clean air. And we have Chris Byram going down on the inside of Ivan. Baukamp, and he, real close to touching there. But we're seeing it again, side by side, and Chris Byram has the advantage this time. Ivan can't close him off because Chris is just right in his back pocket, and we have some battling going on behind as well. Rob Slider and Jason Simons pushing each other to the limit. We have Simons right behind Slider. Let's see if he can make a move down on the inside. He thinks better of it. And we have Eli Cannon getting passed by Cristiano Schegetman and his... Nope, not his teammate. Stuart Gibbons is right up in front of them, setting the pace for the back half of the pack. And we have these 3, Steve Bunting, Nick Marshall, and Steven Grabowski. Louis Cologne having some sort of issue. We're going to hop back and see what happened with Louis Cologne here real quick at the beginning of the race. So Lewis gets into the back of Grabowski.
Grabowski just trying to avoid Eli Cannon and not make contact, and Luis wasn't expecting that much of a break from Steve, and that's a tough one there.
Yep. I'm gonna do a quick jump ahead to there and continue on our race. And like I said, we saw Louis Cologne doing a little side-to-side action later on. We catch back up with Ivan and Chris Byram. These guys are coming up the track, just fighting each other side by side. And I have a feeling it's going to go on all race long.
And I think that's why Lewis is actually staying out of the draft. He wants to let these two fight. He wants to let it happen and see what he can pick off from it.
Yep, and it's a shame that it's his teammate, but at the same time, Lewis is trying to get wins as well. And if his teammate comes together with the car, he's going to try and optimize the points for the team and see what he can't do to, lessen the damage for something like that happening. Simon's still right behind Slider. These guys up front are just battling away. This is going to be a long race, 37 laps. We're only coming up to lap 4. What's going through these drivers' minds right now? If you're Ivan Baukamp, Chris Byram, Lewis Archer, what are these guys thinking right now?
Don't let the guy in front of me get away too far. When it comes to pit stops, you can gain a little bit of time here or there, but it all depends on the competitor in front of you. But if you allow that driver to get a little too far ahead of you and you lose that grab, essentially you lose them, and then you have to make up that time either on picking up your lap times or making a good strategy call and either undercutting them or whatnot. So you don't want to let them get away, but at the same time you don't want to push yourself into accident.
Yep, and Chris going on the inside of Ivan Baukamp again. Ooh, they get real close again. It's like seeing mirrored laps over and over again. These guys are hitting each other's strides at the same point. They are going down the straights at the same point, at the same times, and Ivan's holding Chris off right now. But Chris gets a great exit right there. Ivan tries to defend a little bit, but Chris is potentially going to take it. He's got the inside line. Let's see what Ivan and Chris do here. And Chris takes it from Baukamp. But his teammate Lewis Archer is right behind him. They're all staying hungry in this top pack. Some great racing from these top 5 guys. Staying real close without any damage, without getting into each other. And they are all within less than a second. They're all within a third of a second of each other. Running great lap times. Ooh. Byram getting real close to Baukamp. He brakes a little too hard there. And you can see that gap appear. But that slipstream is going to pull Byram right back up behind Baukamp. And Lewis Archer is trying to give a little pressure onto his teammate. You can see these 3 going down the straight. Lewis Archer trying to stay in that clean air. Byram trying to get in that slipstream, and he won't make a move. Not yet currently, but we can see if he's trying to save it for a different spot. When you start seeing these same over and over and over again, as a driver, you're telling yourself, I want to get by this guy. I want to get by this guy. I'm faster than him. I want to get by. So you start trying different things. You start saying, hey, I'm getting stuck behind him in turn 3 and 4, so I'm going to try and launch myself out of turn 3 and 4 and try and get a different approach from a different straight or a different corner or a different exit. You just start throwing different things at him and trying to pick away.
And at the same time, Chris can see his mirrors, and he's seen that Lewis Archer, Rob Slider, and Jason Simons have all caught up to them, battling. Yep. So he might have just fallen in behind Ivan Baukamp. As you see, they're both starting to pull away from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th place cars right now. So their battle allowed them to catch up. Maybe he just popped in behind and said, I'm going to follow him and try to get these guys off my tail. Because if these guys start battling with me, then I really start to slow down and I really have issues.
Yeah, then you have those 3 wides going, at the end of the straights, and you have, unnecessary battles with your own teammates and with some of the guys behind you that you're faster than, but you're just getting caught up in the fight. You don't want to, risk anything. We have 2 side-by-side cars here. Rob Slider defending Jason Simons still. Eli Cannon close behind. So really, we got about 6 cars right here in the hunt. As we have Steve Bunting is a 12-second gap behind Eli Cannon, and we have Steve Bunting back there who is fighting with Nick Marshall. Grabowski seems to be, might have a little bit of damage, but he's stuck in right behind Nick Marshall. And on these really fast tracks, what do we expect here? And we have Chris Byram takes Ivan Baukamp to second there. Chris takes the lead. But with these really fast tracks, is it easier to overtake or is it harder to overtake, Rob?
Well, sometimes it's easier if the car in front of you makes a mistake and they're going that much slower than you. It can then be a little bit easier to overtake, but when you're both like Ivan Baukamp and Chris Byram running right next to each other side by side, it almost makes it more difficult because you're going so fast and both of you do not want to give up any speed or any unnecessary speed. So both of them are going to push to the limits. Both are going to be side by side, and if you get side by side at the wrong time, that's when things really go wrong. So you really, it's not so much a physical, but it's also a mental game. Is how long can you hold on this breaking point without giving in or making a mistake.
Yep, as we see side-by-side action there from Rob Slider and Jason Simons. And, oh man, these guys are just right on top of each other. All of them are putting their all into the race. And, these fast tracks, they'll really get you. And, oh, we have a dive on the inside. And this track in particular, Watkins Glen, I know our race for the F3s, we had set it on our broadcast there. There's not really a one-line strategy. With these turns, you can go a little wide and keep speed and get through that turn just as fast as if you take, the apex on a shorter part of the turn or a wider part of the turn. There's different ways to take the turn all over the place, so making those passes are really hard at the end of a straight. It's not I had the outside, so I'm going to really throw it on the outside and have that speed, and I'm going to, outside line is the way to go. You can make that speed up on the inside or the outside. Oh, and we're 3 wide right now with Jason Simons, Eli Cannon, and Rob Slider. Eli takes 2 spots in one swoop. Wow, Eli Cannon is up to 4th place. That is a big move. And we still have Rob Slider and Jason Simons side by side. But we see Chris Byram up there on the interval. He is about a second past Ivan Baukamp, and Lewis Archer is about a second and a quarter. Ooh, and Rob Slider slides off the track there. Looks like he just got a little bit too much on the throttle. And we're going to have Jason Simons and Eli Cannon fighting it up still. But now we finally see this break. When Chris Byram finally got by Ivan made a small mistake. When Chris Byram got by him, Ivan Baukamp fell back a bit. And Lewis Archer gave some space as well. So now we have these gaps of about a second and a half. And this is what we see in real life F3. They give the gap. It makes it easier on the car. Getting clean air. It runs cooler. You're able to cool down your brakes. You don't have that so-called dirty air in front of you in the entire race. So when you get that fresh air in front of you, it really helps out.
It really does, and it allows you to focus on running your line and getting your fast laps.
Yep.
Sometimes when you get in a battle, you get so focused, you can lose 5 or 6 laps, and you've lost 5 or 6 seconds not even paying attention. You're just focused on not wrecking. So now that you're all by yourself, you can focus on hitting your marks, getting fast laps, and preparing for your pit strategy to either undercut, overcut, whatever you've got to do to try to get another position or two throughout the next 20 laps.
Yep. Yeah, getting into your own groove really will make these 37 laps go by really quickly. 37 laps seems like it's just an eternity when you're driving this car. You're doing 13 turns. So many shifts per turn, braking zones. You're shifting thousands of times per race, braking hundreds of times per race. It really is just excruciating after a while, and it gets very repetitive, and the margin for a mistake is really small. You can't make a mistake in these cars because they're so precise, so fast, and you touch a little bit of grass, you get a little bit too much curb, you take a turn at a goofy angle, even and you're losing seconds at a time, and that can make or break a race, as we see. Chris Byram is a second ahead of Ivan Baukamp. Louis Archer dropping down to about 2.25 seconds. Eli about 2.25 seconds behind Louis. And these guys in the clean air, they can get stuck in. And that's, at this point, are you focusing more on, I got to hit my fast laps, or are you trying to do more consistent laps here, Rob?
Right now, you're trying to do consistently fast laps. You don't want to push yourself like you're trying to do qualifying pace. You're trying to hit every mark perfect. I mean, you want to hit your marks, but you just want to be consistently fast. You want to pay attention to what the guy's doing behind you. You don't want to wear your tires out too much. You finally got some space. You're not battling hard. You battled hard for the first 5, 6, 7 laps of this race, depending on, if you're Chris Byram or Eli Cannon, that could be 9 laps of this race. You've been battling, so now you want to see what you can get out of these tires, but at the same time still not making a mistake and not letting anybody catch you. So it's a big balance between the time of the other drivers, which you really want to pay attention to now, because you don't want to let them get away. But you don't want to close too much and overwear your tires out to where you have to make a bad pit stop.
Yep, and we have all these guys have relative times up on their screens, or they have the ability to have the relative times up on their screen. What that means for guys that are not iRacing drivers out there, guys and gals, that means that you can see exactly what we're seeing up there on the interval on the timing tower, so they can see Ivan Baukamp is a second and 6/10 behind me. Louis Archer is 4.8 seconds behind me. Eli Cannon is 6.8 seconds behind me. They can see that. They can see who's in front of them, who's behind them, and it some guys turn that off in their cars, so then they just run their lines. They stay in the zone of points to hit, but other guys use that.
Siemens just had a problem. What happened to Simons?
Oof.
He was running up in 4th or 5th, I believe, battling with Eli Cannon.
Yep, he was in 5th battling Eli, and it looks like Simons is out of the race.
Oh no.
He must have caught the wall or something there. But as we were saying, you got to keep that consistency up.
Yeah, and look where Eli Cannon is, that guy we were talking about earlier. He's up in 4th place. He's knocking on the door for a podium. He's got Chris Byram, Ivan Baukamp, and Louis Archer taking up the podium spots right now. So he's really going to have to drive hard and make a really good call on the pit lane. As you see, he's coming up behind Louis Archer.
Yep, yeah, so he's making up some time.
He has the chance. He's got some speed today. Nice to see Eli really fighting up there for 3rd place right now.
Yep, and now he's well within that slipstream range. And seeing these relatives, like I was saying, you see that time getting closer and closer, and you're getting closer to the guy in front of you by, hundredths of a second, tenths of a second per lap, and that just, pushes you and motivates you even more to keep going faster. But on the reverse side, you also, Eli Cannon going off a tiny bit there, but it also gives you the inverse of that. So you have the people behind you. If you have somebody that you're pulling away from, or somebody that you're that you're losing time to, somebody that's gaining on you, you're being caught. That really hurts. And we have Eli coming into the pits here, 13 laps in. He's going to take his first pit stop.
He's going to try the undercut on Lewis. You've seen Ivan Baukamp was 2 seconds behind Chris Byram, and Archer was like 4 seconds behind, or 3 seconds behind Baukamp. So Eli Cannon had the pace to catch Lewis Archer there by himself. He didn't have people, along bringing him along the slipstream. He didn't really have too much behind him other than Jason Simons, who wrecked out a few laps ago. So maybe he's trying to get that undercut and take Lewis Archer out when he comes to pit.
Yep, and we just saw Eli there going by his pit lane ever so slightly. He went about 1 lane too far forward, had to stop, hit the reverse, and get going again. As we jump to our race leader right now, who is Chris Byram. He is putting a little bit of a gap in between himself and Ivan Baukamp, and a really big gap in between himself and his teammate Lewis Archer. Lewis is currently almost 15 seconds back from Chris, so unless Chris makes a mistake, Chris is looking pretty good. He will not pit this lap. As we watch him go across, starting up lap number 14.
Archer must have made a mistake. He's 15 seconds behind Baukamp. That's very he was just a few seconds behind. I wonder what happened with Archer.
Not quite
Did
sure.
he get a little bit loose and lock it up maybe somewhere?
He might have.
Whatnot. He lost about 10 seconds or 12 seconds.
Yep, and we saw Eli. When Eli came into the pits, he had a tiny bit of front wing damage, but we didn't see Lewis and Eli come together at all. Lewis Archer was, probably a full second ahead of Eli for the longest time, and Eli only got to within 0.4 of a second of Lewis Archer, so it's highly unlikely that they touch, but if we miss something there, they could add a tiny bit of contact and come together. But we have the field starting to pull away from each other here. We have Nicholas Marshall fighting Eli Cannon for 5th place, and Eli with some great pace here today. Nicholas Marshall just trying to catch up to him, along with Louis Cologne. And these guys have not pit yet, but they must have had some incidents that pushed them back a little bit. We have Rob Sliders gone into the pits, Stuart Gibbons into the pits once. Eli Cannon and Louis Cologne both have pit stops, but the rest of our drivers do not, which leaves Chris Byram, Ivan Baukamp, Lewis Archer, Steve Bunting, and Nicholas Marshall, all who have to come in the pit. And these drivers are required to make their mandatory 1 stop for tires and to top off their fuel. These guys are just pulling away from each other ever so slightly, a little bit more each in each lap. Chris Byram putting on a clinic right now. He is, like I said, about 2.5 seconds up on Ivan Baukamp, and he's putting more time in between them each lap, and more time in between his teammates and the other competitors. Chris is really just running away with it right now. We're about 20 minutes into the race with 15 laps done. And if you're Ivan Baukamp, what are you trying to do right here? Are you really trying to push it, or are you just holding on, hoping that Chris is going to mess up in front of you?
I mean, Ivan's holding him at a good 2.5 seconds. If you've watched the interval in between them, the last few laps, he's kept it around 2.4, 2.7 seconds. So I really think he's honestly just kind of hanging in there and waiting just for the pit stop strategy. waiting. Maybe he's going to let Chris go in and try to run a couple laps, or maybe he's waiting to see if Chris is going to try to go early and try to take it at the same time so he can come out right behind him and have that slipstream. We're just about to hit halfway here, so we definitely know that they can make it to the end on fuel. And if they stop now, they don't. The longer they keep going. Oh, as Chris Byram has a big problem in front of Ivan Baukamp.
Yes, he does. Chris looks like he slipped up there.
Oh, a bunch of smoke. He didn't lose too much time. Lewis Archer is still 20 seconds behind him, and he's only a second and a half behind Ivan, so he could still catch back up to him. But is this the opportune time to go and take your pit stop? You made a mistake. You've let that lead go. You've heated your tires up. Do you come to the pits now?
Yep. So if this was me in this situation, I would come to the pits right away. You know you can make it if you adjust your fuel, and your tires are going to be really hot. So staying on the track is going to be really hard. You're going to have a big fight in front of you, and you're not equipped for the fight with these hot tires. Ivan's going to be, on his tires. He's been running the same pace, same kind of wear, same kind of temperatures in tire, lap in, lap out, and honestly, it's going to be hard for Chris to make a move. As you can see, even down the straight, he's losing a bit of time, and you wonder if he touched the wall at all or if he got any damage on the floorboard by going over into the grassy area. That can affect his car as well, so you'd want to get any damage that happened fixed up, tires in, and you won't lose that much of an advantage just because then it's your pit lap anyway.
Yeah, I feel like he must not think that there's any damage on that car. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have come in the pits. It was right there after it. Chris is really smart. He's really, really experienced racer. And so I think he really thinks that he's got a little bit more to go. He probably didn't make too much of a mistake. There was a lot of smoke, so it was hard to tell. Maybe he just got a little sideways, locked it up, and didn't fully spin it and kept it straight, and didn't even really go off for too much. So
and
overall, the driver knows what the car needs, and if he's going to stay out on the racetrack, well, maybe he's got a little bit more that we don't know about.
It's going to be all about the feel as we look at his car right now. It doesn't look like there's any front wing damage, but the main concern would be any under the car damage, some floorboard damage. That'll really make or break some of that straight line speed. So we'll see here. We'll watch his interval as he comes up, and you can see he's just losing tenths of a second down the straight. So if I had to guess, there's probably something that he can't feel or he can't see right away. But yeah, he just lost 3/10 of a second going down that one straightaway, and he might make it up in the corners, but it's going to be, goes a little bit wide. It's going to be harder for him to make it up if he doesn't have the right aerodynamic, and then if that underside of that car is damaged, it's super hard to tell. You can't see any physical damage. You can barely feel it down the straight. You think you're going fast, but you're losing that tiny bit of time every single time you go down the straightaway, as he is right now to Ivan Baukamp.
And I'm sure Ivan Baukamp is seeing that if he's got his relative open, and he's seeing just them couple tenths here and there that he's gaining on Byram, that might make him think either, hey, I need to try to make this fuel last as long as I can because I'm still gaining on him right now. Why try to level the playing field? Because and as he comes into the pits right now, Chris Byram's going to assume the lead, and Ivan Baukamp's going to make his pit stop on lap number 19.
Yep, Ivan is running down pit lane right now. Take a look at him. Coming into his pit lane. Looks like he has a good pit entry. Stops, and he's got a good stop. He's up, tires are off, fuel's going in, back down with new tires on, and he is off again. Really good pit stop there from Ivan Baukamp. He's going to come out right behind his fill-in teammate this week, Rob Slider. And we'll see if Rob can't help him out with a little bit of a slipstream. Rob Slider's going to have the blue flag, though, as he is a lap down. So this is where some of that team tactic comes into play, too. Ivan getting a little bit of a slip from Rob. You know, Slider is that lap down. He's going to have to get out of the way eventually, but where does he get out of the way? This is down a straight. This is down one of the corners. We can see he slides away and gives Ivan a little bit of a boost there. We're going to see we have Louis Cologne coming out of the pits. Stuart Gibbons just getting in the pits. Going to be coming out of the pits in just a moment. As we see Chris Byram pulls into the pits, and this is where it's going to be crucial for Ivan. As we see his teammate Louis Archer coming around the corner. Only a couple seconds. Ivan Baukamp coming up behind him. 26 seconds. Can he make that up?
Oh, he has to back
no!
up.
Chris Byram passes his pit lane as Ivan Baukamp passes him. Oh, wow. We've seen that by multiple cars. That we were talking about it earlier during the warm-up phase, how important it is to get your pit stops nailed and down pat. And we just saw Ivan Baukamp overtake Chris Byram. And Ivan is, oh my, that's a good 10 seconds ahead of Chris Byram there. Almost 11. Chris Byram's going to have a lot of work to do. He's got one lap newer tires. That's not going to make a huge difference. So he's going to really have to hope.
Archer's going to have to make that pit stop still, so that is going to put Ivan Baukamp in the lead. With that gap, Ivan might just kind of, cruise around the track, and Chris might be able to sneak up to him. I'm not exactly sure how much pace Chris has got extra in the tank, but I mean, here they've been pretty close to the same pace the most race, so Chris is really going to be hard pressed to catch up to Ivan.
Yep, yeah, we're going to have a big push from Byram for sure. Archer just trying to put as much of a gap in between himself and Baukamp to try and lessen that pain a little bit of the pit stop he is going to have to take. He is the only one other than Nick Marshall that has not stopped. We have Louis Cologne coming up behind Nick Marshall here. Got a little bit of mid-pack action. Louis Cologne coming up, and like we said, Nick Marshall will have to stop as well. We see Cologne making his move down on the inside of Nick Marshall. Nick Marshall isn't gonna risk it and try and jump in front of him. He lets Cologne by fairly easily, and Cologne's already a second and a half ahead of him. So great move, great to pass Nicholas Marshall there by Louis Cologne. As we hop up to our race leader, currently Louis Archer. And if you're Lewis, you're wanting to run this car as far as you can on this low fuel before you fuel back up and put that weight back into the car. He's put almost a second a lap on Ivan Baukamp. He's just trying to widen that gap as much as he can. So when he comes out on fuel, everybody's fairly even on the track for fuel. He will have the fresher tires. And as you see, he's just putting a little bit more and a little bit more, tenths at a second, or tenths at a time on Ivan Baukamp. And Chris Byram, slowly making his way closer to Baukamp. 6.3 seconds. That is about a second and a half over the last two laps.
And Archer just turned his fastest lap of the race this last time by, so he's got to be getting close to that low fuel where he's going to have to be coming in? I'd have to imagine in the next, what, 4, 5, 6 laps?
Yeah, I don't think he could make it much longer on what he's got in his tank. Like you said, he's running his fastest lap so far, which means he's on his lowest fuel that he's been all race. Every lap it gets a little lower, a little lower. You get a little bit faster, but those tires start to degrade. So you don't want to, have that lightweight car sliding across the track, because that can spell disaster as well. So you want to have that nice even pace between your tires being worn and being hot and being really just scrubbed away to, I'm lighter. So it's really good push here by Lewis to he's up to a 13.3 second gap.
And is he playing a game? Did he sit back in P3 this whole time and just save his tires for when he got to low fuel so he could just push and push and push and then get to his last stint, have lower fuel, and push and push and push and find himself up on top of the podium? Lewis Archer definitely has the pace to do so maybe that's what he's trying to do, just get the most life out of these tires with the last few laps on his fuel load.
Yep, yeah, and that's definitely a possibility. I mean, you can, as a driver, you can really push the car the whole time, and your tires are going to degrade quite a bit, but you can save those tires by, taking your turns wider, not turning in nearly as hard, taking the as we call it, the wide line or the high line, to where you're not turning in nearly as hard, and you're not scrubbing those tires away. You're going to keep your speed up, and you're not going to take that tight high G turn where your tires are just taking a ton of pressure, a ton of load on the shocks, on the springs, and you can lighten up on that. And then when you need it later on in the laps, in the race, you've got those tires left, whereas somebody might have 50% of their tire left. You have 75. So you're able to push hard later. Whereas if they push too hard and they're on 50%, that's when we see cars start slipping off the track, and we see incidents later in the race. And Lewis Archer is not in the pits. That is the pace car. For some reason, it locked me onto the pace car, trying to get on Lewis Archer.
Archer and Baukamp just turned the same lap time, a 1:32.7 that lap. So Lewis Archer being out of the pits, not pitting yet, and Ivan Baukamp with his fuel load to the end, turning the same laps at the moment.
That best lap right now is that 1:31.264 by Chris Byram. But like you said, some really good lap times coming out of Lewis Archer and Ivan Baukamp, trying to push to catch each other. Lewis virtually catching Baukamp, and Baukamp literally catching Lewis Archer right now. And this is where strategy comes into play. Lewis is wondering, did I make the right call? Did I make the right strategy? Ivan's saying, yep, a pit stop here takes about 25 seconds. So as long as that gap is 25 seconds or less, I should be able to pass Lewis Archer. And right now it's only 14.1 on the interval. So Ivan Baukamp's got to be happy camper right now.
Yeah, and looking back, Chris Byram's only been able to gain a second in this whole time on Baukamp. So Byram not able to get as much of a push as he'd have liked at the end of this race. That one lockup, that one little bit of a lockup we've seen where he lost 2.5 seconds to Baukamp, and then that little mistake we've seen on pit road. Just shooting past that couple little seconds has now accrued itself to a 6 or 7 second gap that he just cannot close anymore.
Yep, and Chris was on those fresher tires. He had the heat in the tires as well, whereas Ivan did not. And Chris was making up his time, and he just seems to have kind of gotten himself into a rut. We may be seeing what you were saying earlier, where you're trying to conserve those tires a little bit, save them for the end, save them for when you're pushing. If Ivan makes a mistake, then you have those tires ready and set to go. And Chris might have also been using some of his 8 DRS pushes that he has to try and close that gap while Ivan was on cold tires. But you can see he's consistently sitting at that 131 times, sitting at that 6.5 seconds behind. Ivan with a 132.49, and Chris coming across with a 132.47. So he's only making up hundredths of a second, a couple hundredths of a second, and that's it.
Archer still stays out. 11 laps to go. He's going almost 26 laps on a tank of fuel. He's gotta be on E.
Yeah, and his tires have got to be just burning up, screaming. They're worn. He's having a hard time right now. I'm sure he's just trying to keep his lines consistent, trying to make his last 10 laps of the race just flat out as fast as he can go to try and catch Baukamp. And you can see he's even pulling away from Baukamp still. 15 seconds on that gap. And this might come down to Ivan, Baukamp, Chris Byram, and Lewis Archer all fighting each other again. If Chris Byram can pick up the pace a little bit, close that gap to Ivan Baukamp, and then Lewis Archer comes out with, same amount of fuel, we'll say, for all three of them, and Lewis Archer comes out with really fresh tires in comparison to the other two, Lewis Archer can push those tires as hard as he wants for those last 10 laps, especially since he's put down 27 laps so far, 26. He's on lap 27. He's only got 10 laps to put, pressure on those tires. He's going to be really, really able to push as hard as he can. Those fresh tires are going to give him, they might give him a full second advantage, half-second advantage per lap. And with 10 laps to go, if he comes in, he might be able to make up that 10-second gap that he'll have when he comes out of the pits behind Ivan and Chris.
Yeah, it's gonna be a drive. He's got himself kind of in a pickle. He's made his call and he's sitting with it and he's running it out. But you see, there's 15 seconds back to Baukamp and then another 6 back to Byram. So he's going to come out of it's such a long pit road here, all the way down the front straightaway. So he's going to lose them 2 spots to Baukamp and Byram, and then Eli Cannon is another 25 seconds back from Byram. So he doesn't have to worry about Eli Cannon unless he makes a mistake on pit road entry or actually on pit road. But is he going to come out with enough speed to be able to catch up to the back of Byram and Baukamp, who have been running so strong all day?
Exactly. And that's the thing, is he going to have enough time? Is he going to run out of time? Or is he going to be able to really keep pushing? Because he's running consistent 131.9. This last lap, as we see Louis Cologne making a move on Steve Bunting here in the middle of the pack. Louis Cologne hopping up to 5th place. He is hungry for some points.
Those are some very important points because we've seen Cristiano Schegemann, his fill-in for Don Day, his teammate. He is currently the first one retired out of this race. So those extra little points from getting past Bunting are going to be very, very important for their constructors race right now.
Yep, like we said, all these constructors teams other than the Kuda Works team with Louis Archer and Chris Byram are all fighting one another. There's nobody who's really running away with it. There's not a super consistent 1-2 team other than Louis Archer, Chris Byram so far. You have the individual drivers that will put up a good race, race in and race out. But as a team, everybody's really close. As drivers, everybody's fairly close from 3rd place on down. So you never know what's going to happen. You never know who's going to have a breakout rest of the season, because this is this is only halfway through the season.
Yeah, and speaking from experience driving in the F3 car, after 9 weeks, we had that off week in between the European tour and the American tour, but over 9, 10 weeks of racing, being close with all these guys, racing, practicing, doing all these test sessions, you really learn a lot, and you really feel better in the car and get better in the car. You've just spent 3 or 4 months spending all your time in this car. So we're going to start seeing the drivers that really didn't understand it at the beginning start breaking out and seeing what the true potential is. And we can really see some first-time winners or even podium finishers coming up in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, because we're coming up to some pretty decent tracks. They're not super, super difficult, and the competition level is just continuing to rise each and every week here in the IFL.
Yep, we have drivers that, like you said, they're putting all their time into the league races here, which, some guys, they wake up same day as the race, put down their first laps of the week, but a majority of these drivers are week in and week out, putting in 3-4 hours, here, another 3 hours there. We have 3-hour sessions that go up all week long, and these guys and girls are really putting their time in to improve themselves, and you can see the drivers that do that. Some drivers will stay mid to low pack, but the drivers that put in the time, you'll see them progress on up through the pack. We had some drivers that started fairly mid pack to low pack at the beginning of the season last season for our first F3 season that we've ever done, and end up finishing 4th, 5th in the standings when they were happy at the beginning of the year to finish in 10th or 11th, and just trying to fight for 1 point, and they're finishing in 4th and 5th and maybe even podiums. So like you said, the skill level just continues to rise week in and week out, and we have Ivan is just losing the battle to Lewis right now, but holding Chris Byram off at that 6.5 to 7 seconds, depending on what part of the track they're on. And it is amazing to me. I think Lewis still has yet to pit. We'll see if he pits this time around. He's got to pit.
He's got to be coming this time.
Yep, here he comes. He's a little shallow coming into the pits. And let's see.
He's got to not make any mistakes.
As you guys see,
be perfect.
As you guys see, this pit lane is super long. As he comes over, you can see
Here comes Ivan. He's Baukamp's getting ready to come out of the final corner. There he goes.
And Baukamp goes by him. But like we said, Lewis Archer is going to have a lot healthier tires.
Oh, and there's Byram going through turn number 1. Lewis Archer's going to come out not too far behind his teammate, a lot closer than we expected.
Yep, and are there any teammate tactics here where they're going to try and work together to chip away at Ivan? Because right now, Byram is having a hard time, but Archer, with a little bit of help from Byram, might be able to make up a little bit of time if Chris lets him by. And we should see with these fresh tires, they're cold this lap, but you give him a lap, maybe even a lap and a half to 2 laps, and he's going to be making up that full second to second and a half on Chris and Ivan. As you see, Lewis goes off a tiny bit on the right side there with his front right tire. And
yeah,
you can
I believe Baukamp's tires, they're what, 10, 12 laps old right now? And Byram has got to be pushing 8 or 10 or so laps on his tires. So in the next 6 laps with fresh brand new tires and a low fuel load, can Lewis Archer catch Chris Byram and Ivan Baukamp?
So right now we're seeing Ivan Baukamp pit on lap 18, so he is coming up on, this will be 13 laps on his tires, and Chris Byram will have 12 laps on his tires completed, whereas Lewis Archer has a half a lap on his right now. And like I said, the cold tires are going to be a problem for the first lap to lap and a half. But after that, Lewis Archer should start shooting up the order, and really giving Chris Byram a run for his money.
He's got a lot of rubber to work with.
And like I said, if Chris lets him by, then what do we do as a team? Do we let Lewis by and try and let Lewis push to get to Ivan, or do Chris Byram and Lewis Archer just fight it out? Because as a team, you're thinking constructors, we can get another 7 points if we finish first rather than second for one of us. But at the same time, Chris is thinking, I really want to get second. I want to beat my teammate. I don't want to let my teammate by like it's nothing. But as we see right now, Lewis Archer is falling back a slight bit, 4.3 seconds behind. Chris Byram sitting at 7.7 seconds behind. He's losing a little bit of time to Ivan Baukamp right now, but one little mistake by Ivan. Ivan's got to stay consistent all the way till the end here. Otherwise, Chris is going to be there to jump in and pick up the pieces if Baukamp messes up. And same with Lewis Archer. Lewis Archer has just gained a half a second on Chris Byram and is gaining more and more. He's down to 3.3 seconds where he was just at 4.5. He is gaining time like crazy right now.
When it comes to Chris Byram, him and Archer are part of the Kuda Works team, but Lewis Archer has won 5 races this season, and he's at the top of the board. Chris Byram, I believe he's second, if not third, in points right now, and he wants those points ahead of his teammate to try to make it to where he's up there in front, battling for that championship in the Drivers Series too. So yes, they're teammates. Yes, they're going to give each other room. Yes, they're going to battle each other hard. But I don't think Chris is going to let Lewis Archer have this one. I think Byram is going to really give it all he's got and try to get them a few extra points up on his teammate.
Yep, you like to see the teams let these guys race. And, when it's, same team, you think, team orders. But both these guys are at heart race car drivers. And they are going to... they want to race each other. Lewis wants to race Chris. Chris wants to race Lewis. And they wouldn't have it any other way. As drivers, they're sitting there saying, yep, we're going to fight each other. We might be on the same team, but, you're another driver out on the track that I want to beat. And with, teammates, you have the same setups. You have the same car. Everything is the same. So your biggest rival almost... is your teammate.
Yeah, and you never want to blow your teammate out of the water or have all the time, or have your teammate blow you out of the water all the time. So to have teammates like Chris Byram and Lewis Archer together, they're both such amazing drivers, and they both are different kind of drivers. Lewis Archer's got that bold, fast pace, and Chris Byram's got that cool, calm, consistent pace. But they both end up at the same place all the time. And it's really crazy to see how two totally different drivers are so close in nature. And it really works well with the team. As you see right now, they're both currently sitting on a podium run with 3 laps to go left in the Watkins Glen Grand Prix.
Yep, and this would be, you always want to win a race, but you'll take a second and third place podium any day as a team, and you and your teammate up on a podium is something great that you just want to have week in and week out. Obviously, you would want a 1-2 finish for you and your teammate, but a 2-3 is not bad considering you have a whole field of drivers fighting you.
And you really got to give it to Ivan Baukamp up there in the lead. He's got only a few laps to go. He really did everything he needed to do to put himself in this position. It wasn't like it was just handed to him. He worked at keeping Chris Byram right there so that when Chris Byram made his one and only mistake on track, he was there to pounce on him and get it. I really think that if Byram hadn't have made that little mistake on the racetrack, even his little bit of missing his pit there, I think he would have been a little bit closer to Baukamp coming out of the pits, and he would have had a little bit more of a go at it. But Baukamp hasn't made a single mistake all day, and it's put him up into the top spot. And he's really hungry for a win right now, getting ready to come with 2 laps to go.
Yep, yeah, Ivan is, as long as everything goes right and there's no mistakes, even if Ivan slows his pace and he loses, 2 seconds a lap to Chris Byram and Lewis Archer, he would still come out as a race winner, as he's going to be coming up to the white flag here in a couple laps. And we have these 2 drivers right here on the CUDA Works, Chris Byram, Lewis Archer, both pushing each other, and Archer is just closing the gap, 2 seconds right now. But while he is closing the gap, let's cycle through our other drivers. Nick Marshall hanging in there in 7th position, right by his teammate Stuart Gibbons, and it looks like they're just going for a nice Sunday drive with each other right now, sitting in 7th, 8th, looking to get some points. Eli Cannon sitting in 4th. He's 28 seconds behind Lewis Archer, but you never give up. If Lewis catches Chris and Chris and Lewis get together, Eli will be there, pick up the pieces like we said. Right now, Eli's sitting in a great spot in 4th. Lewis Cologne behind him, another 18 seconds back. You can see how far these cars get spread out throughout a big track like Watkins Glen. But Cologne is sitting in 5th. That's going to be some great points for Turning Point. And Steve Bunting, the lone racer for BE Racing right now. His teammate Eric Beddoes had to miss this week. But we see them in the F3 later on Sunday. We have Ivan still sticking it up there, 7 seconds ahead. And you can see he's slowing down a tiny bit. He's losing, like I said, he's losing a little bit of time. But at this point, like I said, you can lose 2 seconds a lap, and he'll be fine. So he's probably just going for a little bit more consistency. You may see that gap drop down, a little bit more. But what we're watching right now, white flag is waving. Ivan's just going to try and get around the track one last time. Let's see if Lewis Archer can make any sort of move on his teammate Chris Byram here, because he's got those fresh tires. He's almost within that reach. And you see Lewis going really wide, trying to get that speed up. And if he has any DRS left, he is on that button right away at the bottom of the hill. And you can see him.
It's close.
It's really close.
Fresh tires. They got 3-lap-old tires. Them babies are prime and warm right now.
Coming around the long, looping right down the hill. 1.5 seconds. Chris Byram just keeping that gap at 1.5 seconds. Great job by Byram.
That really shows that if you take care of your tires, they'll take care of you no matter how old they are.
Yep, and we have Archer.
Really giving it everything he's got right now.
Going a little bit wide there compared to what Byram had done, and Byram keeps it at that 1.5 seconds. At this point, I don't think there's anything Archer can do to fight off Byram. He's getting closer, 1.4 seconds, but
Baukamp's going to come out of the last corner, and he's going to win this one.
Yep, Ivan Baukamp takes home the Watkins Glen Grand Prix. What a drive by Ivan Baukamp. Great job taking P1 and coming across the line. Chris Byram, followed by his teammate Lewis Archer for 3rd. They round off the podium positions. As we're going to see Stuart Gibbons coming across the line as well. He'll finish a couple laps down.
Fantastic run for Eli Cannon in the Orion group.
Yep, Eli, great pace today
for him.
I think his biggest
great points.
His biggest mistake, I think, was just when he entered the pits. I think he entered the pits, and when he drove by, his pit lane. He had a hard time getting it back in reverse. That probably cost him about 10 seconds of trying to get back to his spot where he needed to take tires. Behind him, you have Nicholas Marshall finishing. Louis Cologne coming home in 5th. And Steve Bunting will be our last driver across the line, finishing in 6th place. Great result for Steve as well. Finishing right smack dab in the middle of the pack. That's going to get him some good points. And that is...
See the Wolfpack guys, they're getting a double finish there right next to each other, 7th and 8th. That's going to give them a few points towards the Constructors' Championship, and I'm sure both those drivers are definitely happy they kept it all in one piece. They weren't in the highlight reel this week, and they finished the race in a pretty respectable spot. They got like 5 or 6 drivers down below them, so
Yep.
really good running for the Wolfpack boys. I know they're going to be celebrating.
Yep,
At the end of this one.
And you can see the
podium drivers.
Yeah, I can say you can see our podium drivers here. Chris Byram, Louis Archer, Ivan Baukamp, Nick Marshall stuck behind the wall of podium. But great drive from these guys. Just amazing drive. They pushed each other. Watkins Glen is a tough course on tires. Great, amazing job by Louis Archer to do what he did and conserve his tires for as long as he did. But these 3 drivers put on a great performance today. Ivan, shout out to you, man. Great win. Chris Byram, Louis Archer, great 2 and 3 for the Cuda Works guys. Shout out to you guys for putting on a show for us. But we are going to wrap things up here at Watkins Glen. Want to do a shout out to our sponsors, Butt Kicker Designs Ltd, Powers Garage, or Majors Garage, and we have our last sponsor, AutomotoNews.gr, which help us out with a lot of stories and a lot of advertising for us there. So thank you guys for that. All the prizes, all the contributions from everybody, and yeah, got anything else to add, Rob?
Fantastic race, and make sure you join us next week. We go to Circuit of the Americas. We got 2 more weeks left in our American tour. We got Circuit of the Americas next week, and then Interlagos after that. We go down to Brazil, so it's going to be an interesting 2 weeks coming up. Circuit of the Americas is going to be really fast, so
Yep.
I expect to see a lot of hard racing there. It's a really awesome racetrack, a lot of awesome braking zones. It's really wide in certain areas, so it's definitely going to be a really awesome race to watch next week, that's for sure.
Yep, and that's going to be a completely different beast. It's not nearly the track that Watkins Glen is, being super fast, super looping turns, and it's going to be a little bit more technical. And these guys, we'll see the guys that aren't so great at the long straight races. We'll see some of those guys, turn up their more technical side and show off what they can do. So we look forward to Circuit of the Americas next week. Everybody, thank you once again. Tune in next week and see that race. Broadcast on Saturday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, or 4 o'clock Eastern Time, 3 o'clock Central Time. So we look forward to seeing you all then. Once again, shout out to all the drivers, all the admins, everybody that makes this happen. Great job, and we'll see you next week.